The first thing I noticed wasn't the half-eaten bowl of poutine going cold on her coffee table, or the fact that her cat had claimed my jacket again. It was my name on her phone screen. Except it wasn't really my name. It said Theo, probably the one. I stood there with her phone in my hand like I'd forgotten how English worked. 40 seconds earlier, everything had been completely normal. It was a Saturday in late October, the kind of day in Vancouver where the rain is so consistent it stops feeling like weather and just becomes the background color of everything. Lily's apartment on Commercial Drive smelled like the Earl Grey she'd been steeping for too long, and the cinnamon candles she bought in bulk from the market on Hastings. She had a blanket pulled up to her ribs on the couch, her laptop balanced on her knees, and she was in the middle of arguing with me about whether the second season of a show we'd been watching together counted as good television or just expensive television. "There's a difference," she said, not looking up from her screen. "Budget is not a substitute for writing." "You've said that 4 times. Because you keep disagreeing and being wrong." I was sitting on the floor with my back against the couch because her couch had 3 cushions and her cat, Biscuit, had colonized 2 of them. This was also normal. I spent most Saturdays here, had for about 3 years, since we met at a mutual friend's going-away party in Gastown, and ended up talking in the kitchen for 2 hours about books neither of us had finished. Her phone buzzed on the cushion beside her. She didn't reach for it. "Can you check that?" she said. "It's probably Jess about next weekend." I reached up without thinking. We did this. She read texts when I was driving. I answered calls when her hands were full. We knew each other's passcodes because we'd never gotten around to making that a thing we were secretive about. The screen lit up. There was a preview from Jess, yes, but above it where my contact name should have been, because I'd sent her a link 20 minutes ago about a documentary she'd been wanting to watch. It said, Theo, probably the one. I read it twice. Then I read it a 3rd time. The rain kept hitting the window. Biscuit yawned. The show played on her laptop, someone on screen giving a monologue that neither of us was paying attention to anymore, though she didn't know that yet. "Is it Jess?" Lily asked. "Yeah," I said, and then I didn't say anything else. She must have heard something shift in my voice because she looked down at me. I was still holding the phone. I wasn't moving. "What?" she said. I looked up at her. She looked at the phone. Then she looked at my face. I watched the moment she understood what had happened. It moved across her expression, like weather, confusion first, then recognition, then something close to panic. She reached down and took the phone from my hand in one smooth motion, locked it, and tucked it between her thigh and the armrest like she was hiding evidence. Jess just wants to know about Saturday," she said. Her voice was entirely too casual. "Okay, so I'll text her back later." "Sure." She opened her laptop again and stared at the screen. I stared at the middle distance somewhere near the TV stand. Biscuit made a small noise and resettled on my jacket. "Lily, don't." I didn't say anything yet. "You were going to." "I was going to ask about the show." She gave me a look that meant she knew I was lying. She was very good at that look. Had been since approximately week 2 of knowing me. I turned so I was facing her more directly, still on the floor, my arm resting on the couch cushion near her feet. "How long?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "You do, though." She pulled the blanket up slightly. Biscuit took this as an invitation and walked across my lap to get to her. "Traitor." "It was a joke," she said finally. She said it to the laptop. "Okay. It started as a joke. Jess and I were doing this thing last spring where we put ridiculous names in our contacts for people She stopped. "It was a bit, a whole thing." "Right. And then I forgot to change it back." I didn't say anything. She hated when I did that, but I'd learned a long time ago that if I waited, she'd fill the silence. She always filled the silence. She once narrated a 40-minute drive to Whistler without stopping because she said quiet cars made her feel like something was being planned against her. "Don't do the waiting thing," she said. "What waiting thing?" The thing where you sit there with no expression and I end up saying more than I intended to. That does sound like something you'd notice. It's manipulative. I'm just sitting here. You're sitting there intentionally. Biscuit had settled across her lap now, and she was petting him with the kind of focused attention people give animals when they want to look busy. Her laptop had gone to screensaver. Outside, a car on commercial sent a small wave of water against the curb. When did you change it? I asked. She pressed her lips together. Lily. Colin's wedding, she said, just like that, flat and fast, like ripping off something. I thought about that for a second. Colin's wedding had been in August, 3 months ago. It was out in Chilliwack at his parents' property. Big old farmhouse, string lights over the yard. The kind of event that starts beautiful and turns chaotic around 9 o'clock when the open bar has been open too long. We'd driven out together because neither of us wanted to deal with the highway alone. That was months ago, I said. I'm aware. So every time I've texted you since August. Yes. Are you awake at midnight? Yes. When I sent you that terrible photo of the parking garage ceiling because I thought the light looked interesting. She finally looked at me. Why did you send that? I thought it looked interesting. It looked like a parking garage. The light was doing something. Theo, but there was something in her voice now that wasn't quite irritation. It was softer than that, and she seemed to know it because she looked back at Biscuit immediately. I shifted so my back was fully against the couch now, looking up at the ceiling. Her apartment had good ceilings, high, with an old plaster medallion around the light fixture that she'd painted the same deep green as the kitchen wall. She'd spent a whole weekend on it and sent me photos of the progress every 2 hours. I had every single one of them still in my camera roll. Tell me about the wedding, I said. She was quiet for long enough that I thought she might refuse. Then she said, Your speech. I frowned. I didn't give a speech. I know. That's not what I meant. She paused. Colin's dad lost his cufflinks right before the ceremony. You found them in the breast pocket of a jacket he'd already checked twice. Then his younger brother couldn't figure out how to tie his tie, and you did it, without making a thing of it. And then your aunt was upset because someone had moved the seating cards around and the table arrangement was off, and you walked her through the whole thing until she laughed about it. She was stressed. I know, that's the point. Lily's hand had stilled on Biscuit's back. You kept doing these small things all day, not for applause, just because they needed doing and you were there. I didn't respond. And then later, after dinner, I went to get my jacket from the car because it was getting cold, and it was dark out and the parking was down the lane, and she stopped. You didn't make an announcement. You didn't ask if I wanted company. You just stood up and said, hang on, and came with me. It was dark. I know. That's just what you do. I know, she said again, quieter. That was the problem. I stood at the ceiling a while longer. The rain had shifted from steady to something lighter, almost fine. The show on her laptop had timed out completely. When I got back to the city, Lily said, I was sitting in my car outside my building because I didn't want to deal with finding parking underground, and I was tired and my shoes were pinching, and I had about 14 bobby pins in my hair that I couldn't locate. A small pause. And then you texted me to make sure I got home okay. I remembered that. A single message. Nothing significant. And I saw your name come up, she said, and I thought, probably the one. The apartment was very quiet. I thought it was funny, she said. I actually laughed. I was sitting in my car at 11:30 at night in a dress I was already mentally returning, and I laughed because it seemed so obviously ridiculous that your best friend drives out to Chilliwack with you and finds your uncle's cufflinks and walks you to your car in the dark and then texts to make sure you got home. And your first thought is, she made a gesture with her hand, a vague, helpless gesture. Anyway, so I changed it, and I meant it to be a joke. Was it? She looked at me, not quickly. She thought about it first, at first. For about a week it was funny, and then it was. She stopped, started again, and then every time your name came up I smiled before I even opened it. Which is not nothing. I stayed on the floor, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I wanted to be careful. Lily had a very specific kind of self-protective reflex, where if you moved too fast towards something real, she would pivot to a joke so fast your head would spin. I'd seen her do it 100 times. I'd probably let her do it with me more than I should have. You could have just told me, I said. Oh, sure, very easy, extremely straightforward. I'm serious. So am I. She finally closed the laptop fully and set it aside. Biscuit redistributed himself. What would that conversation have looked like, Theo? What was I supposed to say? Something like what you just said to me. I just said it because you were already holding the phone. That doesn't change what you said. She looked at her hands. She had ink on her right index finger. She'd been editing a manuscript earlier, an old habit. She still printed things out and marked them up with a pen. I'd teased her about it 2 hours ago. She'd told me to mind my own business and offered me a cookie from the tin on her kitchen counter, which I took because that was also how we operated. Lily, I said, don't. I'm not doing anything. You have your careful voice on. I don't have a careful voice. You do. It's the voice you use when you're about to say something true that you think might land badly. That was accurate. I didn't confirm it. I'm not going to say something bad, I said. I'm just trying to figure out why you're acting like I'm about to. She didn't answer that directly. Instead, she said, you're my best friend. I know. I don't want to make it weird. You called me probably the one in your phone contacts. I think we're already a little into weird territory. She laughed short and real, surprised out of her, and for a second her whole face changed. The guard came down by a fraction. Not all the way. Lily didn't drop her guard all at once, but a fraction. I got up off the floor and sat on the couch beside her, not on her side, on the open cushion that Biscuit had vacated. There was still reasonable space between us. She didn't move away. Can I tell you something? I said. This is the careful voice again. It's my normal voice. It really isn't. Lily. She pulled the blanket tighter and looked at the dark laptop screen. Fine. Yes. Tell me something. I looked at her apartment. The row of plants on the windowsill that I helped her repot last spring. The bookshelf she'd reorganized 4 times and still wasn't happy with, and that I'd moved 6 boxes of books for, up 2 flights from the moving truck. The mug with the chipped handle that she refused to throw out because it was from a cafe in Montreal she'd loved in her early 20s. My extra charger on the side table because I kept forgetting it here and eventually just left it. I'd been calling you my best friend, I said, because that was the safest thing to call you. She was very still. And it was true, I said. That part was always true. But I've been using it like a reason to not say anything else. Like if the word was right, then the whole thing was settled and I didn't have to look at it any more carefully than that. Theo. Theo? I compared every woman I went on a date with to you, I said. Not on purpose. Not like a checklist. It was more like they were beside the point. Every single one of them. And I knew it, and I kept going on the dates anyway because I thought that was what you were supposed to do. That the thing with you was just fondness. That it was just what a long friendship felt like. She hadn't moved. Her hands were folded in her lap. And then I'd come back here, I said, and sit on your floor and eat your food and tell you about the date, and you'd ask questions and give me your actual opinion, which was usually more honest than I wanted, and by the time I left, I'd forgotten why I'd been on the date in the first place. I didn't know that, she said. Her voice was quiet. I know. I was pretty good at not knowing it myself. Outside, a bus went by on Commercial. Its light swept briefly across the window. Biscuit had relocated again to the armrest at the far end of the couch and was watching us both with the flat disinterest of a cat who had been aware of this situation long before we were. So what does that mean? Lily said. Not a question, more like she was checking that she'd heard me right. It means I think you were right about me in August, I said, and I think you've been right about me for longer than that. And I think the probably was fair at the time, but I don't know if it's still the right word. She looked at me then. Really looked at me, the way she did sometimes when she was reading something and came across a sentence that surprised her. She didn't say anything for a long moment. This is very inconvenient timing, she said. I know. I have a manuscript due on Thursday. I know. And Jess is going to be absolutely insufferable about this. Probably. She's been saying this for 2 years. I'm aware. She told me directly at Colin's wedding. Lily's eyes widened. She told you? She cornered me near the barn and said, and I'm quoting, "You know you look at Lily like she's the whole argument, right?" And then she walked away before I could respond. That's exactly something Jess would do. It was a lot to receive at a wedding. And you didn't. She stopped. You didn't say anything to me. I didn't know what to say. I went and had 2 glasses of wine and helped your uncle find his car keys and thought about it for 3 months. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. That's the most you thing I've ever heard. I know. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I changed the name because I thought it would make me feel less stupid for thinking it. Like if it was a joke, it didn't count. Like I'd given myself a little exit. She paused. But I never actually took the exit. No, I said. I noticed. You weren't supposed to see it. I know. I specifically did not hand you my phone to see it. But dial situation. Universe works in mysterious ways. Do not make this mystical, she said. But she was smiling now, not her full one. She had a full smile. She usually saved for things that genuinely delighted her. Books and good coffee, and twice I'd caught it, directed at me when she didn't think I was looking, but closer than before. I hate that this is how this happened. I think it's a good story, I said. It's an embarrassing story. It's a good embarrassing story. They're the best kind. She turned toward me slightly. The blanket was still across her lap. Biscuit had given up on the armrest and was now attempting to sit directly on the lampshade, which wasn't going well for him. The rain had gone almost silent. So what happens now? She said. I thought about that. She deserved an honest answer more than a fast one, and I'd learned a long time ago that Lily could tell the difference between someone thinking and someone stalling. I don't want to leave tonight and have it be like I didn't see it, I said. Okay. And I don't want you to change it because you're embarrassed. I might change it because I want to. That's different. That's allowed. She looked at me. The careful thing in her expression was still there. That part of her that took its time with things that mattered. But under it was something else. Something that had maybe been under it for a while now, without either of us naming it. You know what the probably was about, she said. Tell me anyway. She looked down at her hands for a second, then back at me. It was the probably, because I was scared, not of you, of being wrong, of thinking something was true, and then finding out it was just, she gestured, just me wanting something to be true. It's not just you, I said. She held that for a moment, testing it. Okay, she said quietly. I leaned over slowly, the way you move when you're doing something you've thought about more than you've admitted. She didn't move away. I reached up and tucked a piece of her hair back that had fallen forward, and she looked at me with an expression I didn't have a clean word for. Somewhere between nervous and certain. Somehow both at once. I kissed her. Soft, not rushed. The kind of thing that felt less like a beginning and more like an acknowledgement of something that had been building for long enough that it had its own weight by now. She kissed me back. Her hand found my arm and stayed there. When we pulled back, she kept her eyes closed for half a second, then opened them. For what it's worth, I said, I think the one is the more accurate contact name. She covered her face with both hands. Oh my God. Drop the probably. I am going to throw you out of my apartment. You made me come to this apartment. I invited you to watch TV. And now look. She lowered her hands. Her cheeks were flushed in a way I hadn't seen before, and she was trying very hard not to smile all the way and failing completely. I hadn't seen the full smile directed at me before. Not like this. Not knowing what it was for. Jess is going to be so unbearable, she said. Truly insufferable, I agreed. She laughed, and this time it was real. The laugh that had weight to it, that settled into a room and made it warmer. Biscuit had given up on the lampshade and came back across the couch to insert himself between us with the energy of someone who felt he'd been excluded from an important meeting. We restarted the show. Neither of us was really watching it. She was tucked into my side under the blanket, not dramatically, just comfortably, like it was a small adjustment rather than a seismic one. Which maybe it was. Maybe that was the thing I hadn't understood, that the seismic part had already happened, quietly, over 3 years of Saturdays in parking lots and plates of poutine and texts at midnight, and this was just the moment we decided to look at what had already been built. Halfway through the episode, she picked up her phone to text Jess. I watched her open the contact screen. I didn't say anything. She paused on my name. I felt her pause more than I saw it. She put the phone face down on the cushion without changing anything. Still probably, I said. She tipped her head slightly against my shoulder, and I could feel her smiling even without seeing it. I'm gathering more data, she said. I let that sit. It sat well. The show played. The rain picked up again outside, the soft, constant kind that makes the inside of a lit-up apartment feel like its own small world. Biscuit settled across both our laps like it was a solved problem. Somewhere uncommercial a streetcar went by, its light moving briefly across the ceiling and then gone. Her phone lit up, Jess almost certainly, and when Lily glanced at the screen I caught a glimpse of my contact name in the notification banner before she flipped it over again. She didn't explain. I didn't ask. Whatever the word was, we had time to get there. I've thought about that Saturday a lot since it happened. Not the kiss, though I've thought about that too. I keep coming back to the part before it, me sitting on Lily's floor holding her phone, reading 3 words that weren't meant for me to see, and the fact that my first instinct wasn't confusion, it was recognition. That's the part that got me. I already knew. I just hadn't let myself know it out loud yet. I think there's something worth sitting with in that. The way we can understand something clearly and still choose not to look at it, because looking means deciding. And deciding means you can be wrong. I'd spent 3 years showing up for Lily in every way I could think of, carrying her furniture, fixing the things she kept saying she'd fix, walking with her through dark parking lots without making it a moment, and I'd called all of it friendship, not because it wasn't real. It was the realest thing in my life. But because friendship felt like a word I could live inside without risking anything. Love, or whatever the honest version of what I was feeling actually was, required me to put something down and leave it where someone else could either pick it up or walk past it. That's not a small thing to do. I don't think people give enough credit to how much it costs to say something true when you can't guarantee how it lands. But here's what I've come to understand. The cost of not saying it was compounding the whole time. Every date that went nowhere. Every morning I texted her before I texted anyone else and told myself it was just habit. Every time her name lit up my screen and I felt something settle in my chest, and I filed it under friendship and kept moving. I wasn't protecting the relationship. I was just making it smaller than it was and hoping neither of us noticed. Lily did the same thing from her side of it. She found a word that was true and hid it in a joke so it couldn't hurt her. That was smart, in the way that self-protection is often smart, practical, low risk, a reasonable hedge. But it also meant she'd been carrying something alone for months. That's the quiet cost of caution. You don't lose the feeling, you just carry it by yourself. What I keep coming back to was this. The thing that finally moved us wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a speech or a dramatic moment in the rain. It was just me deciding to stop pretending I hadn't seen what I'd seen. And Lily deciding to stop pretending the name was only a joke. 2 people choosing honesty at the same time, in a small apartment on a rainy Saturday, over cold poutine and a show neither of us was watching. That's it. That's the whole thing. I think the life you actually want is usually sitting right next to the version of it you've been settling for, and the only thing separating them is the willingness to say what's true, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed, even when you might be wrong, even when it's inconvenient, and your best friend has a manuscript due Thursday and her cat is watching you like he's been waiting for this conversation for years. Biscuit was, for the record. That cat has always known more than he lets on.